I heard the words, but they didn't make sense at first. "Your ring, Mom. I sold it." My son's voice floated through the phone so casually, like he was telling me the mail had come. I was still in my faded blue robe, the one with the coffee stain on the sleeve Mark always teased me about. I'd been standing in the same spot for 10 minutes, staring at the percolator as it gurgled and hissed. The kitchen smelled like yesterday's burnt toast and the ghost of Mark's aftershave that somehow still clung to the curtains. My coffee had gone cold in the chipped Denver Broncos mug he'd used every morning for 20 years. "Jacob, what did you just say?" My voice cracked, thin and shaky like an old woman's. I hated how it sounded. "The diamond engagement ring Dad gave you," he repeated, a little louder this time, as if I were hard of hearing instead of stunned. "I sold it yesterday. Got $12,000 for it, which is honestly incredible for a 2-carat stone right now." He sounded pleased with himself, the same tone he used when he closed a big deal and expected applause. "I put the money into the trust account I opened for you last week. You'll thank me later, Mom. Jewelry just sits in a drawer collecting dust. You need liquidity now that Dad's gone." Liquidity. The words slapped me so hard I actually flinched. My free hand flew to my chest, fingers searching for the ring that wasn't there anymore. The skin felt naked, foreign. I could still feel the ghost of the band, the tiny indentation it had left after 32 years. Mark had saved for that ring by working doubles at the plant, coming home with grease under his nails and exhaustion in his eyes. He'd proposed in the gravel parking lot of the Sunrise Diner, where I waitressed, rain pouring down, streetlights haloed like angels, and his hair plastered to his forehead. He dropped to one knee in a puddle and said, "Marry me, Sarah. Let's build something that lasts." I'd cried so hard the mascara ran into my mouth. That ring had been on my finger through 2 pregnancies, 3 miscarriages, every fight, every laugh, every hospital stay, every sunrise coffee on the porch. And now my own son had sold it while I slept. I sank into the kitchen chair, the one with the wobble Mark had fixed 100 times, with whatever was handy. This time, a folded matchbook from last Tuesday's crossword. My knees felt like water. "Jake, I wear that ring every single day. It's the only piece of your father I had left that I could touch." "Mom, please," he interrupted, impatient, the way he got when servers were slow at restaurants. "You're 61. You shouldn't even be on your feet 12 hours a day pouring coffee for truckers. The diner's 20 minutes each way. Gas prices, oil changes, insurance, it adds up. I've already talked to Aunt Linda. Willow Creek has an opening. The sale of the ring covers the entrance fee with a little left over for incidentals." Willow Creek? The place with the peach hallways and plastic flowers and plastic vases, where the air smelled like disinfectant and forgotten dreams? I'd held my own mother's hand in that exact building while she asked me for the 3rd time who I was. The memory rose like bile. "Jake, I'm not moving into a home," I said, trying to sound firm, but my voice wobbled. "And you had no right—" He cut in, already bored. "I've got a client call in 3 minutes. I'll text you the bus schedule. 1 transfer, 45 minutes tops. The fresh air will be good for you. Love you, bye." Click. The silence that followed was deafening. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. I stared at my bare finger until the room blurred. If this story hits close to home, if you've ever felt invisible to the people who are supposed to love you most, subscribe to the channel and stay with me. I have more to tell, and I promise you you're not alone. I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed the little black velvet box on the counter, the one that used to live in the top drawer of my dresser. It was open, empty, the satin lining gleaming like a tongue sticking out at me. Jake must have left it there yesterday when he came over to help sort Dad's things. I'd been so foggy with grief that I hadn't noticed him slip into our bedroom. I walked down the hallway like a sleepwalker, bare feet cold against the hardwood Mark had sanded and stained himself one summer when Jake was 10. The jewelry box on my dresser looked ransacked, drawers pulled out, contents scattered. My mother's tiny pearl studs, gone. The gold bangle Mark gave me for our 25th anniversary, gone. The little gold locket with Jake's baby picture, gone. Only the cheap stuff remained, tangled like afterthoughts.
My breath hitched. I dropped to my knees and opened the closet safe with shaking fingers. The manila folder labeled important papers in Mark's block letters was missing too. That's when my legs gave out completely. I sat on the carpet that still smelled faintly of his sawdust and Old Spice and cried the kind of tears that come from your bones. He hadn't just taken the ring, he'd taken every piece of value he could carry in his fancy leather briefcase while I dozed on the couch with a migraine and a heart that hadn't stopped aching since the funeral. I called Claire because I didn't know who else to call. Mark's best friend since high school, the woman who'd stood up with us at our wedding, who danced with Mark to their song when I was too pregnant to move. She was also the only attorney I trusted. "Sarah, honey, are you okay?" Her voice was warm coffee on a winter morning. "No," I whispered, and then the story poured out of me like poison I'd been carrying too long. There was a long silence when I finished. Then Claire's voice turned to tempered steel. "I'm coming over. Do not touch a thing. We're fixing this today." She arrived in 37 minutes, silver hair twisted into its severe knot, clutching her briefcase like it was loaded. She listened without interrupting while I repeated everything, tears dripping off my chin onto the table. When I was done, she pulled me into a hug that smelled like White Shoulder's perfume and righteous fury. "That ring was titled solely in your name, Sarah. The watches, too. Mark updated everything last year after his physical. Jacob had zero legal right to touch a single item." She pulled back, cupped my wet face in her cool hands. "We're getting it all back, and then we're going to see exactly what else your husband was protecting you from." She made phone calls from my kitchen table like a general planning a war. First to the pawn shop downtown. She'd put the owner through law school on contingency cases 20 years ago. Second to the bank. Third to her private investigator friend Tom, who apparently owed her a liver's worth of favors. "Tom's pulling the shop's security footage," she told me, hanging up. "We'll have proof by tonight." While we waited, she opened her briefcase and slid a thick manila envelope across the table. Mark's handwriting on the front, strong and slanted. "For Sarah. Only if Jacob starts acting like his Uncle Victor." My stomach flipped. Uncle Victor, Mark's charming, gambling, always borrowing, never repaying older brother who died broke in a Vegas motel with a bottle of Jack and a stack of bad bets. I opened the envelope with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Inside was a letter and a small brass key. "My Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and our boy has started down the path I prayed he'd never take. I've watched him change these last years, measuring people by their zip code instead of their character, chasing things that glitter instead of things that matter. I should have told you everything sooner, but I wanted to protect you from worrying. The key opens safe deposit box number 184 at Denver Federal Credit Union on Colorado Boulevard. Inside you'll find the real will, the trust documents, and proof of what I've been building since the day I married you. I never wanted flashy things. I wanted freedom for us. Freedom for you. Every overtime shift, every side job fixing neighbors' cars, every dollar I could spare went into real estate, quietly, all in your name through M&S Holdings LLC. Right now, it's worth about $5 million, give or take. Monthly income after expenses runs around $90,000. Yes, you read that right. I wanted to tell you on our 35th anniversary cruise we never took. Use it however you choose, love. Travel the world. Give it away. Burn it in the backyard if that makes you happy. Just know it was always yours. And know I loved you every single day. Mark. I read it 3 times before the words stopped swimming. Claire sat quietly while tears ran down my face and dripped onto the table, making little dark circles on the oak Mark had refinished the year Jake left for college. $5 million. My Mark, quiet, Flannel-wearing, grease-under-his-nails Mark had built an empire in the background while I refilled coffee and worried about grocery budgets. And Jake thought I needed managing when I apparently owned half the luxury apartments in Lodo, including, I realized with a jolt that stole my breath, the glass tower he lived in, with the Mountain View corner unit he loved posting on Instagram. Claire's phone buzzed. She listened, then looked at me with a slow, fierce smile that made her look 20 years younger. Tom got the footage. Jacob sold the ring for $12,000 cash yesterday at 2:14 p.m. The pawnbroker's holding everything until tomorrow morning. We can buy it back tonight, with a police escort if you want. I wiped my face with the sleeve of Mark's old robe. Let's go get my ring. The pawnbroker looked like he wanted to crawl under his counter when Claire walked in with me and two uniformed officers. The overhead fluorescents buzzed. The air smelled like metal and desperation. My ring sat in the glass case under a spotlight, sparkling like it had never left home. The pawnbroker handed everything over without a word when Claire slid the revocation form across the counter. I slipped the ring back on my finger and felt my spine straighten, like a missing bone had finally clicked into place. On the drive home, streetlights flickering across the windshield, Claire said softly, "There's more in that safe deposit box I think you should see before you talk to Jacob." We went straight to the credit union. The brass box was cold in my hands. Inside, thick folders of deeds, bank statements, a flash drive, and one more letter in Mark's handwriting. Take Claire with you when you visit the management company tomorrow. Her name is Elena Reyes. She's been waiting for your call. And Sarah, don't let Jacob bully you. You were always the strongest person I knew. Time he learned that too. Love always, M. I laughed through fresh tears. Of course Mark had planned every detail. The next morning, I drove Mark's rattling old pickup downtown myself. No more letting people chauffeur me like I was fragile. The Reyes property management office smelled like lemon polish and money. Elena met me at the elevator. Mid-40s, warm eyes, sharp suit, handshake firm. "Mrs. Lawson, your husband spoke of you constantly. I'm so sorry for your loss." She led me to a conference room with windows full of mountains. Spread across the table were color-coded maps, glossy photos, spreadsheets that made my head spin. "Your portfolio currently includes 22 residential buildings and 5 commercial spaces," she began, voice gentle. "Current valuation $5.1 million, net monthly income $92,000 after our 8% fee." I just stared, mouth open like a fish. One of the residential buildings was the pinnacle, 30 stories of glass and steel where Jacob had his corner unit with the mountain view he loved showing off on Instagram. Elena slid a folder across the table. "Your husband left specific instructions regarding Unit 2704 should certain contingencies arise." I opened it, a single sheet in Mark's handwriting. "Raise rent to market rate, $4,800 per month effective next lease cycle. Conduct full inspection. No exceptions." I almost laughed out loud. Mark had known. That night, I invited Jacob to the house for dinner. He arrived looking smug, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly tips, kissing my cheek with that practiced air kiss he learned from real estate friends. "I see you got the ring back," he said, smirking. "Good. Emotional attachment is fine, but practicality wins. Now, about Willow Creek." "Sit down, Jacob." The words came out steady, stronger than I felt. Something in my tone made him pause mid-step. He sat. I placed the velvet box, now containing every stolen piece, in front of him. Then Mark's letter. Then printouts of the portfolio with the pinnacle highlighted in yellow. He read in silence. The color drained from his face until he looked like the little boy who once scraped his knee and needed his mama, not the slick 35-year-old in the tailored shirt. You own my building?" His voice cracked like ice on a pond. "I own 27 buildings," I said quietly, feeling the ring warm against my skin. "Your father built them for me.
While you were telling me I couldn't afford car insurance, I was collecting $90,000 a month in rent, including the $2,900 you've been paying, below market by the way, because your father arranged it as long as you behaved like the man we raised. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. I've instructed management to raise your rent to market rate next month and to enforce every single lease term. The unauthorized sound system you installed, the dog you're not supposed to have, the party's security has warned you about 3 times, all of it will be addressed. Mom, I'm not finished. I slid the inspection notice across the table. You have 30 days to correct the violations or vacate. He looked like I'd struck him. His eyes filled, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy in there, scared and unsure. He started to cry then. Not the manipulative kind he'd perfected as a teenager to get his way, but real, shoulder-shaking sobs that tore something open in my chest. He started to cry then. Not the manipulative kind he'd perfected as a teenager to get his way, but real shoulder-shaking sobs that tore something open in my chest. I thought I was helping, he whispered, voice breaking. I thought you were lost without Dad, that you needed me to take care of you. I was lost, I admitted, tears slipping down my own cheeks, but not the way you thought. We sat in silence a long time. The clock ticking on the wall, Mark hung crooked on purpose because he said perfect was boring. Finally, Jacob wiped his face with the sleeve of his expensive shirt. He asked, "What happens now?" Small. Now you decide who you want to be. The man who measures worth in dollars and control, or the man your father spent 30 years trying to raise. He left quietly that night. Didn't slam the door, didn't argue, just nodded once, like a weight had settled on his shoulders that suddenly looked too thin for all the designer clothes. 3 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. Mom, it's Jake. I'm moving out of the Pinnacle. Found a smaller place I can actually afford. Can I come by Sunday? I'd like to hear more about Dad's buildings and about the scholarships he wanted to start for kids who want to be mechanics. I smiled at the screen until my cheeks hurt, ring catching the kitchen light just like it had the day Mark gave it to me in the rain. Come hungry, I texted back. I'm making his chili. Extra spicy, the way he liked it. Some lessons hurt like hell. Some heal like sunrise. I'm still learning the difference. And if my story touched something in you, if you've ever had to find your voice when someone tried to take it away, leave a comment below and tell me I'm not alone. If you want to walk with me through the next chapter, subscribe. There are more stories like this, and I promise you'll want to hear how they end. The ring is back on my finger where it belongs. And for the first time in 61 years, I know exactly how much I'm worth.